Hello and welcome. In this episode, you will discover what is the 80/20 rule, how does the 80/20 rule apply to sales and marketing, what is testing and why it can impact your results exponentially, and you will watch me get exposed and coached by Perry Marshall. Today we're talking about the 80/20 of sales and marketing, and my guest is Perry Marshall. Welcome, Perry.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you. And as usual, if you're watching or listening, please make sure to like and subscribe to the show. If you have any questions as we're talking, today's topic is extremely important, and it actually can move the needle for your business and make a massive impact for your business. I know it has done it for me. And we're going to dive deep into the 80/20 principle. So if you have any questions about that and how to apply it, post it as a comment, and we're going to do our best to address your questions. Now, let me do the proper introduction to Perry, and we're going to dive into a very interesting conversation. Perry Marshall is one of the most expensive business strategies in the world. He is endorsed in Forbes and Inc. magazine and has authored 8 books. At London's Royal Society, he announced the world's largest science research challenge, the $10 million Evolution 2.0 prize. His reinvention of the Pareto Principle is published in Harvard Business Review, and his Google book laid the foundations for the 100 billion pay-per-click industry. Perry has a degree in engineering and lives with his family in Chicago. Perry, welcome again.
Good to be here.
What's the weather like in Chicago right now?
It's raining hard, so I guess the grass must be very happy right now.
Absolutely. We got it was pouring rain the other day in Calgary up here. It was like a hose. It was scary. Too much water. But I was happy, like you were saying, the grass was happy. So, Perry, let's get us started. What is your story?
Well, I'm the guy who got laid off from his engineering job when wife was 3 months pregnant and was forced to go into sales. Really, if I was going to replace my salary and not have to move, I had to take a risk. And so all of a sudden, I'm pounding the phone book and pounding the pavement and trying to get people to let me in the door and show them my stuff, and driving all over the Chicago area, putting together sales appointments. And it was a whole lot of bologna sandwiches and ramen soup and struggle and rejection. And eventually I got fired from that job after 2 years because it wasn't working out. But just before I got fired, I discovered direct marketing, like copywriting and direct response advertising and stuff like that. And this was just a little bit before the internet started to take off. And I got very intrigued by this. My current employer was not interested in using any of that kind of stuff. But I got fired and I landed a job at another company, and they had a website. And I realized, without anybody even telling me, hey, like all this stuff that I'm reading about in these newsletters and these courses about direct mail letters and stuff, it's almost the exact same as a website. Like visiting a website is exactly the same as like opening a letter, like piece of paper, and I got to get somebody's attention. I got to engage them in a story. I got to get them to do something. And so I understood this. And then I started chiseling away. And 4 years later, we had grown that business about 20x. And we sold the company to a public firm for $18 million. And I got some stock options out of the deal, and I hung out my shingle. And I said to myself, well, dude, you're sort of good at this marketing stuff. You're not fantastic, but you're at least good enough to sell industrial equipment. What if you actually got really good at this? And And then I got really serious. And that's the short version of how an engineer turned into a marketing consultant, because I hung out my shingle after that and started doing consulting work. And now here we are.
Love it. That's quite a story. Very interesting, and looks like you went through a lot.
Yeah. And I was in Amway, and I was drinking the pink Kool-Aid, and I was drawing circles, and all I knew for a long time was a piece of very bad advice. Massive action solves every problem. That is like so not true. Massive action mostly just creates more problems. It doesn't solve them. And massive action done in the wrong place in the wrong way will make you very broke really fast. And I learned that the hard way. In fact, 80/20 Sales and Marketing is the book I wish somebody would have given me when I was 25 and clueless. And it would have helped me figure out there's only certain kinds of sales and marketing jobs that you should take because of your unique personality, and that's the marketing DNA test. I would have understood that a whole bunch of stuff that I was trying to sell, I shouldn't even try to sell, because it did not have a unique selling proposition. There were 6 or 8 other companies that made pretty much the same thing. And, sometimes in your youthful optimism, you think, oh, well, that shouldn't matter. Like, maybe they'll like me, or maybe I can give them a lower price, or like you convince yourselves all these reasons why, well, I could probably make this work. And you try doing a lot of things that are frankly impossible. And then you just beat your, you just imagine just pounding your nose against the brick wall, like that brick wall behind you, Mustafa. Just try pounding your nose against that thing until it gives way, man. Like, how long is your nose going to last, and how long is that wall going to last?
I got a big nose, so it's probably going to last me a while. Love it. Oh, yeah. I that's one of my other wishes as well. Is like, I wish I would have learned the 80/20 principle back when I was 20. It would have made a massive difference for me. So what do you do these days, and who do you serve?
Well, who I serve these days is typically an entrepreneur who's somewhere between $500,000 and $5 million revenue. And they are not afraid to take a machete to their existing assumptions and try some new things and take some risks. I've worked with people in every industry you can imagine. I mean, from banks to software to healthcare to, you name it. And what most of my clients have in common is that I think there's 3 stages to mature entrepreneurship. The first stage is when you're kind of clueless and you're just scrapping and you're doing anything that'll make a buck, and you don't really know who you are, and you don't really understand the world, and it may not be working at all. Okay, that's like the first step. The second step is when you actually figure out some things that work, and you get a business going, and it may in fact be a very successful business, but you're still focused on the business, like make the business. I think the third step of entrepreneurship is where you've got the business thing figured out more or less. And now you're trying to figure out, what contribution am I going to make to the world? Or what am I going to do that I would find really meaningful, and not just punching the clock or collecting a check? And, for some people it might be, well, they want to write a book, or they want to share their wisdom, or they want to change their industry somehow or another. For other people, it may be some huge thing, like I'm going to cure cancer, or, I'm going to solve poverty or something. But I think most of my clients are people that are somewhere between stage 2 and stage 3.
Love it. So let's dive into it. What is the 80/20 rule?
Well, the 80/20 rule, first of all, is one of the most important things that you can ever learn, because it is the most basic law of cause and effect. And I had no idea how powerful this was or how important it was. Even though I'd heard of it. Like, I think most people have heard of 80-20. Most people have heard of the Pareto Principle. Most people probably heard some story about the Italian economist that said, hey, 20% of the people own 80% of the real estate, and 80% of the people own 20% of the real estate. So, gee, that means the haves have 16 times more stuff than the have-nots. And he was right about that. And maybe some people have also heard, well, that's true of your customers too, that 80% of your sales come from 20% of your customers. I hope that you've at least heard that somewhere. And I'd heard that, but there's a whole layers and layers to it that I did not understand at all. The first thing that I did not understand is this is not just a rule of thumb that's about real estate or economics or sales figures. It's actually everything. Like, it's the size of craters on the moon. It's the size of asteroids and stars. It's the traffic on the roads in the town that you live in, that 80% of the cars are on 20% of the roads. But then, and on, like rabbit populations, and just about every spreadsheet that you ever make in a business, the columns are 80-20, and most people don't even notice. But then there's another, so that's a big deal. That just what I said right there, like, you could probably spend one whole semester in college just absorbing what I just said. But then there's another layer to it, which is 80-20 is fractal. And what that means, fractal means pattern inside a pattern inside a pattern inside a pattern. There's an 80-20 inside every 80-20. So not only do 20% of the roads carry 80% of the cars, but 20% of 20% of the roads carry 80% of 80% of cars. And 20 of the 20 of the 20 carry 80 of the 80 of the 80. So that means that 1% of the roads carry 50% of the cars. Now think about it. Well, the expressways, the interstates, the really busy streets, yes, they have almost all the cars, right? And then you have the little residential neighborhoods where one car drives by every 30 minutes. And so this is absolutely everywhere. And when you bring this into business, what it means is, it means half of what you do is almost a complete waste of time. Like, half of what you do accomplishes almost nothing. And 1% of what you do accomplishes half of everything you get. So if you're a salesperson on commission, half of your income last year you earned in 5 days. Think about it. Well, where did half of your income come from? Well, if you like chart it out, well, the biggest deal was this one, and then the second biggest was how long did it actually take you to get that number one? How long did you actually work on that? And then number two, how much did you actually work on that? Like, well, most of your income came in 20 to 40 hours of work that you did last year, scattered around. Like, there was a major hit in April, there was a major hit in August, there was a major thing in November, and most of the rest of the year was filler. And this is how it is for everybody. And the funny thing is, most education trains people to not notice this. So you need to get straight A's. What does that mean? You have to be equally good at everything. You need to check all the boxes. Well, wait a minute. If there's 20 boxes to check, I guarantee you that 2 of them are more important than the other 18 put together.
100%.
If you stop and think about what is the impact of checking this box, well, one of them is like, well, I gotta scribble a note to this very insignificant person, right? And then the other one is, I need to make a phone call to a CEO. And on a piece of paper, they look equal, but they're anything but equal.
Perry, you mentioned that 50% of things that we do don't produce any results. Do you have some examples of what those could look like? So
Well,
people that are watching.
so there's this very interesting rule that my friend Lynn Bertain came up with, and he calls it the 20-120 rule. And it says that 120% of your profit comes from 20% of your business. So think of it like you've got the best business, the really good stuff, and then you got like the medium stuff and you got the negative stuff. He says the very best 20% of your business made last year, it made 120% of your income. And then the bottom 20% of your business lost 20%, and it brought your 120 down to 100. So in other words, 20% of what you're doing makes a lot of money. 60% of what you're doing pays the light bill, and 20% of what you're doing actually loses money. You're going backwards. You would make more money if you did not ship that product, because you don't realize it, but you lose money on every shipment because you tape a dollar bill to every box. You lose money on that client because your employees hate them, and it increases your turnover, and you spend time hiring people to replace the ones that your client drove away. And then you find out you don't actually make money on that client because they negotiated really hard, and they chewed the margins down to nothing, and you're not even making money. You may be losing money serving that client.
So
Right?
what's an action item for someone that is listening or watching? And like you said, a lot of people know about the Pareto principle, but they don't know what to do with it, and they don't apply it. So in that case where they're losing money on that customer or on that product, what should they specifically do to fix it?
So you should fire a client.
Okay.
And you know who they are. You
Mm-hmm.
don't like them. They don't particularly like you. Or maybe you're all enmeshed and emotionally entangled with them, and like it's not doing you any good, right? And like send them a letter or send them an email or call them and say, hey, we had a board of directors meeting, and we're changing direction, and we just can't serve as many clients anymore. And starting September 1st, we can't handle your account anymore. One time
Mm-hmm.
I stood up in front of a whole room full of CPAs. I was at a certified public accountant conference, and I was the keynote speaker, which is pretty interesting because I'm like the furthest thing from an accountant that you could ever have. But I said, how many of you have that client who, like, they show up on April 13, okay? We only got 2 days to go, and like they got like giant shoe boxes full of all this stuff, right? And they send you all these emails and all these phone calls, and they're upset and like, well, you got to do this right away. And they only pay $300, and they make your life miserable. And how many of you, like, this client? And all these hands go up. And I said, I, Perry Marshall, best-selling author, give you permission to send all those people a letter. I'm sorry, Mr. Jones, but we can't handle your business next year. Here's a list of other accountants that you could call. And because why are you doing 15 hours of work to make $300 for somebody who drives you crazy, right?
Right.
Do it, right? So discontinue a client, discontinue a product, or how about you can't bring yourself to discontinue the product because it's the first one you came out with, you're emotionally attached to it, there's customers, they couldn't get it somewhere else. Okay, double the price, triple the price. If they can't get it anywhere else, like send them a letter. I'm sorry, our pandemic, inflation, whatever, like expenses went up, and it's going from $125 a unit to $225 effective November 1st. Right? And you just fix that problem. And 80-20 is about what you say no to. So from an 80-20 lens, sales and marketing is not a convincing people process. It is a disqualification process. Who should I not sell to? Who should I not give a presentation to? Who should I not call?
100%. And so, yeah, it's a matter of, I guess, being selective. I don't want to work with these people. Like, actually, I have my own example. Like a month ago, I was talking to a prospect, and I'm talking to them, and they start reacting weirdly to my questions. And they're like, "Oh, don't ask me these kind of weird questions, and don't say this, don't say that." And I'm like, I need to get out of here.
Mhm.
But if it's starting like this, I can guarantee you I'm going to have headache later. So I got out. So what I did is I did not budge on the price at all. He started asking for a discount. I was like, not going to happen. He's like, oh, I'm gonna go somewhere else. I'm like, well, all right, you do it. So yeah, just clarifying question on that. So we made most of our money on 5 days last year. Does that mean that I need to work 5 days moving forward?
Well, that's probably not realistic. Most of the time it's not. However, what it does tell you is that if you look at most of what you did last year and you compare it to the stuff that actually made the needle move,
Hmm.
there's a whole bunch of stuff that you convinced yourself or somebody convinced you is productive, and it's not. It's not. Like, none of the leads that we got from that trade show ever turned in any dollars.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to notice that. And guess what? Everybody that was referred to us by Joe turned
Good.
into a great client.
Hmm.
Right? And you pay attention to these things, and you have permission to not think of things as equal. In fact, not only do you not think of them as equal, you know in advance before anything ever happens, it's going to be ridiculously unequal. If you hire 10 salespeople, you know before you hire any of them that two of them are out going to sell the other eight. And so now you think about it differently. You go, an 80-20 sales manager is never going to try to fix the other eight. Maybe
Hmm.
fix two or three of them, but it should probably just fire the other four or five. Now, this changes the way you approach the whole situation, because the way most people approach hiring and getting hired is they have this idea like, well, this is like a lifelong thing, or this is like going to last a really long time, or like this is a major commitment. If you're hiring 10 salespeople, you should hire them on a basis that says, hey, we're going to try you out for 2 weeks and we're going to see how things work out. And odds are 50% that you're not going to work out. And if you don't work out, it's no big shameful, awful thing on either of our parts. It just means it's not a match. And you can leave and I can leave.
Yep.
Right? It's like, hey, dude, it's okay. Now, I expect you to perform. And if you don't, I'll show you the door. But it's not like, oh, we're going to interview these people for 12 weeks and then we're finally going to make this agonizing decision. Then we're going to have this expectation that they're going to be around for the next 10 years. No, like, hiring should be an audition, not an interview. If you wanted a bass player, would you invite him over and just talk about bass guitars for 2 hours? No, like, I want to see you play something.
Hmm.
Right? So, like with hiring, like right now is not a easy time to be hiring people because the demand is high. Well, why don't you make it easier by saying, well, we audition our employees for 5 days. Like, get yourself in here and pick up the phone, or or pick up the computer or whatever, and go. And like, next.
Hmm. So you bring people in, and it's an auditioning process versus a hiring process.
Yeah,
You want to see their performance.
most people talk, right? Well, no,
Yeah.
let me see what you do, right? Or if you're going to hire any kind of an administrative person or a support person, bring them in for a day. I want you to help me clean up these files. I want you can you do this filing? Can you do this data entry? Can you do this? Um, like, I only need you for 2 days, and I'll let you know by noon the second day if I'm going to need you more, right? And this one lady comes in, she does a fantastic job. You're like, can I just hire you right now, right?
Yep.
And but 3/4 of them, they're not going to do a very good job. They
100%.
lie on their resume. They tell you a great story. It's not even true. Well, if you don't actually hire them, then you don't have unemployment, all this kind of federal bureaucracy.
Yeah, I like that idea of getting a good feel for what they can actually do versus what they claim or say
Right.
of
Most
doing.
people are not even self-aware enough to really tell you what they're good at or what they're not. Like, you need to watch them.
100%. So let's talk about how 80/20 principle applies to sales and marketing.
So my favorite 80/20 story is my friend John Paul Mendoza was 17 years old, Denver, Colorado, dropped out of high school, hitchhiked to Las Vegas, and became a professional gambler. And his mother was thrilled, absolutely thrilled. Oh, this is what I want my son to be doing. But that's what he did. So he's in Vegas, and he is playing poker for a living. And after a few weeks of this, he's going, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And he's got his fake ID, and he's going in and out of casinos. Well, he goes to a gambling bookstore, and he's looking around for better gambling books. And he bumps into this guy named Rob. And Rob runs a professional gambling ring. Hey, Rob, do you think you could teach me how to play a better game of poker? Well, John, for a percentage of your winnings, I could teach you how to play better poker. Okay, so they shake hands. Jump in the Jeep, John, we're going for a ride. Okay, they're going down the highway in the Jeep. Rob, how do I win more poker games? And Rob says, you win more poker games by playing people who are going to lose. You don't want other professional poker players. You want some kid from Wichita who got $5,000 from his grandmother, and he's going to Las Vegas to get rich. That's who you want. He goes, well, where do I find that guy? And Rob goes, here, I'll show you. And he pulls into a parking lot of a strip club, and they go into the strip club, and Rob sits John down at a table, and there's, all these dancing and music and biker dudes and everything in there. Rob pulls a sawed-off shotgun out of his jacket, which he carried everywhere he went. Like, this is the kind of gambling, guy that we're dealing with here. Pulls out a sawed-off shotgun, holds it under the table, opens the chamber, slams it shut so it goes, and John looks around like a couple of biker dudes are like, hey, where did that sound come from? Right? And the owner of the club comes over, and he goes, hey, what's going on over here? It's okay. Just teaching the lad a lesson. Not causing any trouble. John, did you see those bikers who turned around when they heard that noise? Yeah. Don't play poker with them because they're not marks. You play poker with everybody else. And that is called racking the shotgun. He eliminated the 20% of people in the room who had 80% of the street smarts.
All the winners. He identified them and said,
Yes.
don't go with these guys.
Yes. Those guys know how to play poker, and those guys know how to gamble. Those guys are risk takers. Okay, that kid over there with the blonde hair from Wichita, he didn't hear a thing. You
want to play with that guy.
You play with that guy. Okay, now everything you do in sales and marketing is racking the shotgun. Did they subscribe to the magazine or not? Rack the shotgun. Did they donate to the charity or not? Rack the shotgun. Did they subscribe to the email or not? Did they open the email or not? Did they click on the link or not? Did they sign up for the webinar or not? Did they attend the webinar? Did they buy the thing at the webinar? Did they buy the second thing? Did they buy the third thing? It's rack the shotgun, right? And every one of those is an 80-20 elimination event, right? You start out with 1,000 people and you end up with like 3 people that'll spend $10,000 each. That is how marketing works. And it works on very small numbers of people. People think it's all about having 1 million followers or 1 million fans or 1 million YouTube. No. In fact, a lot of those people are broke. They make, 1/100th of a penny every or something, right? Whereas, okay, the guy that needs open heart surgery, like he'll spend $60,000 like that.
Absolutely. Very important. So I guess we're looking for people that are reacting to a message.
Yes.
Or they have taken action of some sort somewhere. Maybe they clicked on an ad, clicked on a Google link, visited your website, like you said, attended a webinar. And those guys are a lot more likely to take action and be a customer and do something versus the average Joe on the street that we have no clue who they are, what they do, and the rest of it.
Right. It's all about small numbers of people taking action. It's about watching what they do. So in marketing, there's a saying, a buyer is a buyer is a buyer. And what that means is there's people who buy stuff, and there's a whole bunch of other people who don't. There's people who buy this kind of stuff, and then there's everybody else who doesn't buy this kind of stuff. Like there's people who buy shotguns, and you know what? If they buy shotguns, they probably have more than one. And if they don't have a shotgun, there's probably not anything you can say to get them to buy a shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. If they've done it before, they're a lot more likely to do it again, or if they have shown interest. But if someone is anti-gun person,
they're
probably not going to have a good time.
No, like it's not what they do. So this applies to everything. So I went to a seminar. I do this a lot when I speak to crowds. I go, everybody who is wearing shoes, stand up. And then I go, okay, sit down if you own less than 5 pair of shoes. And then a bunch of people sit down. And then I say, if you have less than 10 shoes, sit down. And then a whole bunch of people sit down. And then I go 20. And then I go 40. And then I go 80. And I go to 160. Most of the time I get up to 80 and there's still quite a few people standing up in the room. The most I ever got was 800. There was one person in the room who had 800 pairs of shoes.
And like there's shoemakers.
Always, no, they're women who like shoes. That's it. Yep. They're not shoemakers, they're not retailers, they're not anything like that. Almost all the time, there's at least a couple of women who have more than 100 pairs of shoes. Ownership of shoes is 80-20. 20% of the people own 80% of the shoes, and 20% of 20% own 80% of 80. So in any room, 5% of the people own 2/3 of the shoes. Anywhere. If you go to a restaurant tonight, I guarantee you that in that restaurant, 5% of the people own 2/3 of the shoes. It's a law of nature. It's human behavior, it's Facebook accounts, it's Google accounts, it's podcast downloads, it's the size of craters on the moon. It's all 80-20. And they never taught you this in school. And so you can predict.
Yeah.
Okay, tomorrow, 100 people are going to visit my website, and I know that 80% of the action is going to come from 20 of those people. So who are they?
100%. So, in your sales and marketing, we have, let's say, lead generation, lead conversion, and that whole funnel, right? What is the 80/20 in marketing, like the nested 80/20 in the marketing activities itself? What portion of our marketing and sales activities actually produce 80% of results?
Well, so there are four, I think there are four things in marketing
Okay.
universally: traffic,
Mm-hmm.
conversion, economics, and 80/20. Okay. Traffic, you have to get traffic, then you convert the traffic. And then when you convert the traffic, there's collecting the money and making a profit. Traffic conversion economics. And then you reinvest the profit back into traffic. You go buy more traffic, and then you convert more traffic and you get more money, and it goes round and round and around in a circle. And if it's a profitable circle, then the company goes from 0 to $1 million to $10 million.
So out of these four steps, would like one of them be responsible for most of the results? Like, would say traffic be responsible for?
Well, you really have to work backwards. Really, it's economics that drives everything. Everybody thinks of traffic, and it's true. Like, if you don't have traffic, nothing's going to happen.
Mhm.
But the way a mature marketer thinks is they go, it goes in order: traffic, conversion, economics. But because I'm selling, not buying, I have to think backwards, and I have to go economics, conversion, traffic. I have to go, what would be a great offer to put in front of these people that they would absolutely say yes to and have a high profit margin for me and high value for them. Okay. And then you go to, what would I say to a person who's in that situation? That's conversion. And then there's traffic. Where do I find those people?
Mhm.
And you think that way. And all of it's 80/20. So 80% of the traffic comes from 20% of the traffic sources. 80% of the conversion comes from 20% of what you say. 80% of your value comes from 20% of what you sell. And so, even though we all know that there's a million little tiny pieces to all of this, if you know that 1% of those pieces control 50% of everything, you know that you can ignore most of it and just focus on these little hinges that swing big doors.
Hmm. So once you've identified the right market, the group of people that have a need and have the money to buy your product, that's like the biggest piece we have to figure out first. And
Yes.
then figure out where they are. Like, we're in the pond, the fish are hanging out.
Yes.
You know, put the bait in. We
Yes.
don't want to go in the, across the entire ocean.
No.
And then, and it's probably best to work with a fisherman in a situation like that, so you're not wasting a whole bunch of bait and running out of money.
Yes.
And then you increase your odds, I guess,
Yeah.
based on that. Love it.
So there's a great piece of wisdom I got from John. It's in my 80/20 book. John, the rack the shotgun guy, the guy that told me this story. It's called the 5 power disqualifiers, and they are the 5 things that are always true every time anybody sells anything to anybody. Number 1, they have the money. If they don't have the money, they are not buying it. Period. End of story. That's it. If they don't have the money, and I know this sounds abundantly obvious, but I didn't realize this for years. Like, I, somewhere in the back of my brain, I thought, if I hold hands with them long enough, and if I sing Kumbaya, and if I get them to like me, the money will somehow show up. No. So have the money. Number 2, they have a bleeding neck. They have some urgent reason. They are in pain. There is a situation. They got to solve it. Those, the people with the bleeding neck are the ones that are going to write the check. Okay. Number 3, they buy into your unique selling proposition, not somebody else's unique selling prop, yours. Okay. Number 4, they have the ability to say yes. Now, why is that important? There's many situations when you're selling anything that the person you're talking to can say no, but they can't say yes. They can stop you, but they can't let you go forward. So if you got a husband and a wife and only the husband's there, you're not selling a kitchen remodel if the wife is not there. Period. There's no point in even talking to the husband if the wife isn't there, right? Or in a corporate sale, you talk to some engineer, he could say, no, we don't like your stuff. He can't write you a check. He can't approve the purchase order. He has to go to his boss. He has to go to the engineering manager. He has to go to the purchasing department. Well, you better know that before you ever talk to him. Do you have purchasing authority? No. Oh, well, who should I be talking to? Well, that would be insulting. Well, what? You going to spend 4 hours, waste his time, waste your time, and then find out that he can't say yes? I did that. Oh, my goodness. I did that for years. Okay, just wasting. How many times do you want to drive around the Chicagoland expressways talking to engineers that can't say yes, can't write a check? Does your wife like not having any rent money? Right? Number 5, it fits their overall plans. Now, if you take the 5 power disqualifiers, have the money, bleeding neck, buy into your USB, able to say yes, fits their overall plans, you can eliminate 90% of what anybody would do in marketing, because if all 5 of those things are not true, you're not going to sell.
For sure.
And it narrows from 100% down to probably 5% most of the time.
For sure. That's what we're with a lot of our forums, or when we get on the phone to talk to our customers or our prospects when we're setting appointments, we ask the qualifying question about the money piece. Like, are you in a position to invest in your business to fix this problem?
Right.
And we're asking nicely. It's not like, do you have the money? It's like, are you in a position to invest? And if they say no, we're like, well, would it even make sense to even have a conversation?
Most of us are too timid to just come out and ask the question because we think it's not nice.
Yeah.
And that's an illusion, because if they don't have the ability to make decision, all you're going to do is waste your time, waste their time, waste their company's resources, and never accomplish anything. And that is not doing anybody a favor.
Perry, what do you have to say to people that they're focusing on averages and they are?
That's a great question. So everybody is trained to think about average, right? So how many of you took the history test at school and the teacher drew a bell curve and said, okay, 10 of you got A's and 25 of you got B's, right? And the average was 77. You realize that the average is almost never what you actually want to know. Almost never. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, if you said, well, the average purchase of the average customer is $143, I can promise you, as an 80-20 expert, that 1% of the customers spent $14,000, not $143. Almost guarantee you it's true. Well, those are the ones that matter. The top 5% of your customers brought you 2/3 of the money, and none of those customers were average. They were all way above average. The average customers don't even pay our bills.
Yep, 100%. You know what, Perry? I read the 80-20 principle back in 2017, and it almost overnight made a drastic change in the way I think. I almost dropped my agency overnight, and so then I started applying it to everything, every single thing. Like I opened my closet. I'm like, I'm not wearing at least half of all this crap. I threw it all out. Garage, same thing. Basement, same thing.
Yeah.
And I own a software. It's a WordPress plugin that does bulk spell check for websites. So at the time, the capacity was able to scan about 10,000 pages, say, in 20 minutes.
Okay.
Then what we did is we went and timed every function inside the software. Sure enough, 10 or 20% of this functions inside the software, we're taking 80 or 90% of the time.
Yeah.
We optimize just 2 or 3 functions, and the software speed it up like massively. We're like,
Yes.
wow.
Yes.
And I've been fascinated by, like, I've been waiting for our conversation today forever because it has actually impacted me. And then, like, to your point, and then I'm like, people, this whole thing is so amazing. You got to know about it. Have you done it? They're like, yeah, I know about it. I'm like, have you actually applied it? They're like, it's a great principle. And so,
Your story about the software is perfect because if there's 100 steps in the software to scan a web page, 20 of the steps take 80% of the time,
100%.
right? And 5% of the steps take 2/3 of the time. So that means if you take the slowest 5 steps and you double the speed,
Massive.
you're scanning 20,000 pages instead of 10,000.
So funny enough, we went to 50,000 pages in 90 seconds.
Mm.
It was just day and night. Day and night. Same thing I did with my customers. I actually looked at my customers, and then I sorted them by revenue per customer for the past 12 months. Sure enough, 80% of sales comes from 20% of customers.
Yes.
Same thing with the products. Like 80% of sales came from 20% of products. And so love it. So my focus is on follow-ups. I run a call center that specializes in follow-ups. And funny enough, the reason I got into this business is that naturally about 80% of our sales come from 20% of our existing customers or so. So we do the follow-up to make sure we keep the customers. So I was going to ask you, what do you think would be the 80-20 on follow-up, which is a place where a lot of people leave a lot of money on the table and a lot of people don't do it? Like the 80-20 on follow-up is like, I guess 90% of businesses don't do follow-up, probably.
Well, I had a consultation just 2 hours ago with a client, and they were asking me so it's slightly different question, but I think it's pretty close to what you're asking about. They said, our salespeople have a like a strategy session kind of a thing with a customer, and it's related to how they use their computers and their software security. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have this whole conversation, and then the customers always say, oh geez, I just don't have time for this. And there's a 15-minute initial setup and then a 1 hour follow-up thing that they have to do for somebody to use their security, their internet security. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they said customers always say, oh geez, I just don't have the time. I'd love to do this, and I know our security is vulnerable right now, but geez, I got this client, I got this meeting and all this. And we talked through it, and what we realized was, if the salesperson will move that first thing right into the initial sales call, like, can I just ask you a few questions that are necessary to set you up? And they roll right into this question. They can completely skip the middle meeting. Like, it doesn't have to be, oh, you want to buy this? Great. Let's set up your onboarding session tomorrow and then your follow-up session next week. Let's move the onboarding session to right now so that we don't even have to have a follow-up, right? Like, if I've got their credit card now, then they're going to have the session next week because they already committed. And honestly, a lot of times you have to kind of almost trick people into doing what's good for them. Like in the case of this company, they do cybersecurity. And if their kind of client gets hacked, oh, it's awful. It's like, it's terrible. They're going to be miserable for a month with insurance companies and possible court cases and all this stuff, right? Like, Well, you know, if you pay us what, $50 a month, and you have the software in your computer, and you right, but people get tangled up and, oh well, I'm too busy, right? And so I think a lot of times, well, how many steps can you just eliminate from the process so that you don't have to fight
Yeah,
uphill nearly as far?
100%. Look, funny enough, one of the things that I do is we map out the entire process and start timing, like you said. And we're like, sure enough, the bottlenecks take 80% of the time. And as soon as we eliminate the bottlenecks, the process just improves easily by 50 to 80%. Very, very interesting. Eh, Can I share one thing about the 80/20 about what we do?
Yeah.
When my team makes follow-up calls for our customers, between 50 to 20% of people actually answer the phone.
Uh,
It's like a universal law that like you said, it works everywhere. And like you're like in school, we've been taught about this averages about 50/50, and it seems like it just doesn't exist.
no, I think average is, it's super easy to understand, but it's almost never the most useful thing.
Hmm.
I'll prove it to you if anybody knows anything about statistics. They never tell you the average income, they tell you the median income.
What's the difference?
Well, the median income means half of the people make more and half the people make less. The average is actually quite a bit more. So like if the median income in the United States is, let's say it's $75,000 a year, let's say, the average is like 110. Why? Because the 5% that make 2/3 of the money push the average way up.
Right.
Okay, so like even though most basic newspaper statistics is proof that average, like median is very understandable. It's like, okay, it's much more like what most people are how most people are doing, right?
100%.
It is useful to know that the median income is $75,000 a year. But if you want to sell something, you want to sell somebody who makes 200. It's a
Yeah,
lot easier. They have disposable income. The $60,000 person, they don't have any disposable income.
100%. Look, even if you want to work with averages, probably work with the average of the top 10%.
Right.
That's probably a better average to work with,
Absolutely.
right? And it's like different ball game. Um, do you have a daily routine that allows you to eliminate all the time wasting that people usually do? And like, is there like an 80/20 daily routine?
Yes. Yes, there is. So it's very counterintuitive. People think they don't have time to do this, but it's I'll prove to you that it's actually very time efficient. So most people start their day like this. They wake up, they reach across their bed, and they pull the
The
device
devil.
in front of their face, and they begin the death scroll.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And most people, before they have even gotten out of bed, are already reacting to a crisis of some kind. It might be CNN, it might be whatever's on Facebook or TikTok or something. It very well could be email, it could be very well be text messages. And literally, before their feet hit the floor, they are in reactive mode. They haven't even noticed that somebody else is running their life. CNN, TikTok, text message, email, crisis, fire. I do not start my day that way. I never start my day that way. Here's how I start my day. I roll out of bed, I boil a cup of tea, I turn on some music, and I get my notebook, and I just write. And I'm not writing a book, I'm not pushing the pen. It's like I do my gratitude, do my prayer, do my spiritual centering, and then I start to ask questions like, what is really important today? And like, what's on my list? But then on my list, what is the most important stuff on the list? What is the stuff that, honestly, if you did this one thing and that got checked off, you could totally justify taking the rest of the day off and not feel guilty, because this could be put off for 2 weeks and that could be put off till tomorrow. But this one thing, it pays for the delegation. It pays for like whatever. You start your day that way.
Mm-hmm.
Start your day by asking, what am I not going to do? What am I going to delegate? What is not my responsibility? And you start with that. That will totally change your life. And
100%.
this is how I have started my day every day for 9 years.
Love it.
I have one more thing. Can I just say, if you looked at all the stuff I'm doing, you go to marymarshall.info, which is my personal page. I've got World's Largest Science Research Prize. I've got a Cancer and Evolution Working Group of the American Association of Cancer Research. I was last week, I was presenting at a science conference. I organize masterminds. I consult with 300 different industries. If you look at all the stuff I'm doing, okay, and why am I so productive? Because I spend the first hour of my day focusing on the most important stuff, not reacting to everybody's crisis. And I just wanted to insert that in there, because people think that they're too busy. They think all this stuff they're doing is so important. Look, 2/3 of the stuff you're doing is not important. Don't kid yourself. It's trivial. 90% of what's going on social media has nothing to do with anything that you need to be doing right now. Nothing. It's just making you angry. Stop it.
It does. It does. It does. Perry, where can people find out more about you?
Go to sell8020.com and you will be able to buy 80/20 Sales and Marketing for a penny plus shipping. So in the US, that's $7. For $7, we will ship this book to you. It's right over my shoulder, 80/20 Sales and Marketing. Go to sell8020.com. This book will change your life. Mustafa, I think you really kind of already said, this book just completely twisted your whole view of how business works.
100%. It changed my life. And sell8020.com. So it's SELL8020.com.
That's right.
And there you're giving away the book with $7. You just ship it to them.
Yep.
And if there is one book that has made a massive difference in my life, it's this, the 80/20, man. Like, if there's one thing I wish I knew 20 years ago, when I was 20, it was this 80/20. That was a good rhyme there.
Well, it is incredibly powerful. And the more you learn how to apply it, the more you see how to apply it more. And it just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And I mean, I've been teaching 80/20 for literally the last probably 17 or 18 years. And it just goes, there's another level, and there's another level, and there's another level. And it just keeps making the world simpler. There's always an 80/20 reason why the world works the way it does.
100%. You know, I even created a course on what worked for me. I put it up, like, I talked to so many people that they're wearing to it. I'm like, this is how you apply it. Here's to the software. Here's to your closet. Here's to your sales. Here's to your website. And I'm sure you've done the same. And sometimes I find myself derailing from the 80/20. I'm like, and then I come back and talk to a bunch of people, and then I'm like, all right, I need to sit back and be like, like you said, what's the one thing I need to figure out today? What actually is the 80/20? Does that ever happen to you, or your routine is fixing that and avoid?
Well, I'm always asking, look, there's never just one answer. Okay. I think it's every day you have to ask the question, what is the most important 20%? Because if you start using 80/20 and you start getting rid of the bottom 20%, what you find is the top 20 keeps going, it keeps moving up and up and up.
Hmm.
And you climb to higher and higher levels. And what's 80/20 to an entry level customer service person is different than what's the 80/20 for a president of a company, which is different than the 80/20 of the CEO, which is different from the 80/20 of the investors, which is different than the 80/20 of the customers, right? And so, but what you always know at every single level is that there's a very small number of things that affect almost everything, and the rest of it isn't terribly important.
Right.
And I think this can also be a source of humility, because one thing that I can tell you is that, like, it's not even the management or the company or the marketing as much as it's the market. Like, Elon Musk may be a great CEO, but the most important thing about Tesla is it's in the right market
At the right time.
at the right time. That's more important than how good of a manager Elon Musk is.
Hmm.
Okay. And a lot of times, like, when there's when there's an economic boom, everybody thinks they're a genius, everybody looks like a genius, everybody's making money. No, they're not geniuses. They're in the right place at the right time. But if
It's
you know how to be at the right place at the right time, you can look like a genius a lot more often.
yeah. It seems like to me like it's a combination of a lot of 80/20s.
Yes.
It's like across the board. So I know we're running out of time. Let me ask you a couple of personal questions, and I know you have to run. Would I be all right? So, what's a new thing you have tried recently, big or small?
Well, a big thing that I've gotten involved with is cancer research. 2.5 years ago, I've got this Evolution 2.0 project, and somebody said, "Hey, we want to put together a cancer and evolution seminar in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Will you help?" And I said yes. And that has turned into a huge thing that I could have never imagined. And that kind of speaks to, remember, I was saying, there's like these 3 stages of entrepreneurship. And eventually you're like, well, hey, I figured out how to make a living. How do I make a difference? And I just want to say, I think as soon as you are in a position in your life where you start to have a little bit of bandwidth to do stuff like that, you should go ahead and do it. And it will enhance your career in ways that you can't foresee.
Hmm.
You don't know how the conversations and the connections and all that kind of stuff are going to feed back into your regular life. You just need to have a certain amount of faith that they will. It will broaden you as a person. It will extend your horizons. It'll get you thinking new thoughts. It'll get you into circles that you otherwise wouldn't be in. And frankly, your life will be a whole lot more interesting than if you just stayed in your lane.
Love it. What are your top 2 favorite books of all time?
Well, I unquestionably the Bible, but probably a lot of people would give you that answer. I'll give you a couple more books that I think are really extraordinary. One of them is Star Principle by Richard Koch. He's the guy who wrote the original 80/20 book. Star Principle by Richard Koch is a must read for every business person. And I'll be a little self-promotional. I think you should read my book, Detox, Declutter, Dominate, by myself and Robert Scrobe. It's a lifestyle manual on how to execute 80/20 globally in your life.
Love it. Love it. Love it. What's one thing that have made a massive impact in your life or business?
My dad and my father figures. Um, my dad died when I was 17, and he was a really fine individual. And I learned a great deal from him. And then after he was gone, I think one of the most important things is that I have always had older men in my life that I admired and learned from and made the time and space to spend time with. Huge, huge.
Love it. Last question, Perry. If you had a Facebook or a Google ad where everyone around the globe could see, what would your message be for the people of Earth?
Um, it I would try to engage people in what I call listening to the head office. I wrote a book called Memos from the Head Office, which is it's really a book about listening to the divine. And like I think many of the most brilliant ideas that have ever been had by humans, they didn't just come up with themselves. I think those ideas were gifts that were given to them. And the ability to listen is the ultimate $10,000 an hour 80/20 skill.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Perry, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. I personally learned a lot. Is there anything that you'd like to add that maybe we didn't get a chance to talk about
Well,
before we wrap up?
I just want to encourage, I remember what it was like to have 3 kids in diapers, and I'm in my early 30s and I'm running out the front door trying not to get yogurt on my shirt, and I'm driving to work and the boss is bashing my head in and everybody's demanding and I'm not getting any respect, and I just got in a fight with my wife about how to load the dishwasher, which turned into World War III. And I call that the compression zone. And what I want to encourage, the people that are in the compression zone, maybe you're early in your career, or you're trying to start a business or whatever, is that you do eventually figure stuff out. And especially if you commit yourself to principles, to learning the principles of how the world works and really understanding how it works instead of just learning a bunch of little hacks that may or may not work next year. You will be amazed at how far you can get by the time you're 43 instead of 33. And you do get to a point where people respect you, and you do get to a point where you have some things figured out, and it's not all just random crap that's being flung at you from every direction. I know it seems that way, but that's not really how the world works, and you'll figure it out. You just keep working on it. You'll figure it out.
100%. Love it. Gang, if you have not read or understand the 80/20 principle, if you haven't read Perry's book, The 80/20 of Sales and Marketing, go to sell8020.com and they'll ship it to you, or get it on Amazon if you want to pay more for it. You could do it that way too. But honest to God, like I've been in the marketing world forever, and people come up and they ask for tricks and shortcuts. If there's one shortcut, this is it. Like this is the shortcut, right? And again, I can't say enough about it. Thank you, Perry. I really appreciate you and all your wisdom and expertise. And gang, if you have any questions, put them in a comment, and we'll do our best to get back to you. As usual, make sure you like and subscribe to the show. If you know someone that could benefit from what we talked about, share the link with them or tag them in a comment. And again, pick up the book and read it. I cannot emphasize enough about how important this is. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mustafa Hosseini. You've been watching and listening to Daily Confidence for Entrepreneurs. Bye now.
Thank you, Mustafa.
Thank you.